cancer. Some of you from UU Miami know Ruth Crensher. Ruth Crensher just underwent that few days before Melissa. So if you remember both of them, it is the kind of thing when you have to make a decision. Do you want to do palliative care, or do you want to try a major surgery? And both of these women decided for major surgery. So I asked your thoughts for them as they are now healing. I also asked your thoughts for their family, especially Melissa's, who's extended and quite exhausted. We tend to forget caregivers. Caregivers have a lot, and we always forget the caregiver, but they can be absolutely exhausted. A couple other things. I gave a major speech this week to a transplant organ retrieval group. There were lots and lots of people there. I want you to know I was hired on the spot. They asked if I would join them on the spot, and I said, absolutely not. I have too much fun annoying my congregation students. But it was an interesting time in which I shared some of the delights and joys of what goes on in the transplant recovery. I used, as you would expect, little filters and lots of humor. Okay, Oscar's with us again today. Oscar's going to bring some classical music, which we don't often get, and we're going to be surrounding that with all kinds of other music. So welcome to All Souls, as we have a variety of types of music. Finally, today, I want to thank all of you for showing up. It is a weird kind of share, although you might say all of my shares are weird, because we're doing some history. And then I'm going to ask some pointed questions at the end to you and to me, but nobody likes history. So I appreciate because it's going to be some inconvenient history that we probably blocked out. You know, what we always do, we always block out inconvenient plots along the way. So one more time, let's say hello to Oscar, to Rick Homer, who's here by himself. Maureen is over there with the hounds. Pat is up in Forest Hills. Nanette is in Brooklyn, Connecticut. Dennis is literally on the road. Gregory Bowe is doing tech today. Felix is here with us, our wizard of disasters. Ray is up in Washington Heights. Roy Martin is in Bellingham, Washington, the state thereof. Cecilia is down the street. Kay and Don Schweitzer, Ormond Beach. Danny Sorkin, our docent of New York, who brings us stuff daily and weekly from New York. Kathy Pilafian, our resident Armenian and dog and cat lover. Mary Grimmy from a small village over on the West Coast called Tampa. I don't know if you've ever seen it. Pat Kincaid is here as well, related to Gregory Bowe, as in his mother. Cindy and Larry Deitch are here from Port Orange, and the famous hand. Where's the famous hand?
Here.
So welcome to you all. Let's pull up the service, and we have a time of the lighting of the memorial candle for several, and we see Chris Diaz made it in with us this morning too. Let's wait till he logs in. Chris Diaz is with us. And Chris is logging in. And again, I cannot thank you enough. The attendance this summer has been absolutely delightful, absolutely delightful. So we want to light the memorial candle again for innocents who have been killed in Ukraine this week. We want to light the memorial candle for women who are undergoing incredible stress, innocent, even young 10 and 12-year-old women, because of old males having to try to impose a belief system that is not theirs and for which they are made to suffer. And a lot of that had this. We want to also keep in mind those who are LGBTQ, especially those who are married. This is absolutely insane that we even have to revisit this again. And we want to keep in mind all of those who are going through transgender as they wrestle with their identity, to offer them support and love. And again, we welcomed Hal Francis and Linda Rogers, and again, Chris Diaz. Our candle is always lit in love and support. I invite you to, those of you who wish, to do a responsive call to worship. De Tocqueville in the 1830s was in the United States writing about what he thought, and he noticed that Americans always wanted things done yesterday. Now, that was in the 1830s. So today's responsive reading for a call to worship is kind of a reminder about us and time as a people. You have been given questions to which you cannot be given answers. You will have to live them out, perhaps a little at a time. And how long is that going to take? I don't know. As long as you live, perhaps. That could be a long time. I will tell you a further mystery. It may take longer. And an ancient Hindu reading for those of you who wish to read with me together. Let us look to this day, for it is life, the very breath of life. In its brief course lies all the realities of our existence, the bliss of growth, the glory of action, the splendor of beauty. For yesterday is only a dream, and tomorrow a vision. But today, well lived, makes every yesterday a dream of happiness, and every tomorrow a vision of hope. An ancient Hindu reading. And right now, a special music, some classical music to remind us of how flexible music is. Oscar is playing some Brahms. Thank you, Oscar. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And since we've had others join us, Chris Diaz, Hal and Linda, Barbara Young, and Gail and Tom. And I forgot to mention that the other Reverend who's with us as well, Larry Deach, will be speaking to us in next couple of weeks as a saying hello, so you can be introduced to him as well. The Declaration of Independence. How often we forget some of the essential words. And Nanette, if you'd be kind enough to read this for us.
I would, but you're going to have to make the font a lot bigger. Is it possible?
Yeah, I can make it a little bit bigger.
Oh, okay.
Let's try this.
Oh, that's much.
There you go.
There you go. All right, Nanette.
Okay. When in the course of human events, it becomes necessary for one people to dissolve the political bands which have connected them with another, and to assume among the powers of the earth the separate and equal station to which the laws of nature and of nature's God entitle them, a decent respect to the opinions of mankind requires that they should declare the causes which impel them to the separation. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness.
Okay, and Daniel Sorkin is going to lead the responsive reading, and I will lead us with the indented parts. Daniel, if you would.
Okay. These are the times that try men's souls.
To argue with a man who has renounced the use and authority of reason and whose philosophy consists in holding humanity in contempt is like administering medicine to the dead.
Independence is my happiness, and I view things as they are, without regard to place or person. My country is the world, and my religion is to do good.
Whatever is my right as a man is also the right of another.
Those who expect to reap the blessings of freedom must, like men, undergo the fatigues of supporting it.
When I was teaching children, I began every day writing this on the blackboard. Do to others what you would like them to do to you, telling them how much better the world would be if everybody lived by this rule.
When we are
Go ahead.
when we are planning for posterity, we ought to remember that virtue is not hereditary.
Thank you. Do you like these? These are all old writings. They should be tattooed on lots of people. I'm sorry, I didn't say that. All right, and reading right along, Maureen, if you would read this selection from a very famous writing and work.
I Have a Dream by the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. I have a dream that my 4 little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. And when this happens, and when we all allow freedom ring, when we let it ring from every village and every hamlet, from every state and every city, we shall be able to speed up that day when all of God's children, Black men and white men, Jews and Gentiles, Protestants and Catholics, will be able to join hands and sing in the words of the old Negro spiritual, free at last, thank God Almighty, we are free at last.
Grant us, we ask, to speak, to hear, and to learn, so that our fears may be banished, our minds may become enlightened, our faith be increased, our steps directed to a sense of your presence here and everywhere. Amen. Listening to that last song reminds me of when I was in Brookline, Massachusetts, during the Vietnam War. And I got in a lot of trouble for a sermon I gave, shouldn't surprise anybody. I was very, very keen of the kinds of people who had to fight in that war. And if you listen to that song, it was amazing how many people got exempted, including you know who. I'm consciously aware of that because one of the kids I knew in high school, name was Arfine, got drafted. In 2 months, he didn't come back after 2 months. And I remember paying close attention to who actually fought in this war. I mean, the actual people in the jungles who were fighting. And I remember reading an article, if you don't like the war, fine, take it out on the people who make the war in terms of stuff. But what about the individuals who come back who are scarred? Seeing them get off the airport and screaming at them does not help anything. But what you've done is you've taken it out on the poor and the unfortunate who had to fight. What have you done for them? So I said that, and of course got in all kinds of trouble. But we need to remember that song was true. Who actually fought? Who actually fought in Vietnam? And I'm very, very conscious of the kinds of people who got drafted and also the kinds who didn't have many choices. I'm also very, very conscious of who got out for very interesting means. Okay, today I want to bother you, and I'm sorry about history. I don't know about you. The history classes I had to take were not good. And I suppose I told you this, and if I did, I'm sorry. You know, I got kicked out of high school for arguing with a history teacher. I'm serious. She got up one day and she said, and she had this big thing on the board. She said, I want you to memorize all of the major battles of the Revolutionary War. Was it the Civil War? I think it was the Civil War. No, Revolutionary War. I want you to major all the major 11 battles of the Revolutionary War, the opposing generals' names, the places where they were fought, the dates where they fought, and the outcome. And this was on a Friday. And she said, we're going to have a quiz on this on Monday. And I raised my hand and I said, why? And she said, what do you mean, why? I said, that doesn't teach us anything. All it has to do is memorize, memorize, and memorize. She said, you have a better idea. I said, well, actually, I do. Why don't you have us pick a battle that made sense to us and ask us why we picked the battle and why we thought it was important? She said, are you telling me I don't know how to teach the class? I'm just saying to you, I don't think it's appropriate to sit there and spend a whole week memorizing stuff that makes no sense to us and have us forget it after we take the quiz on Monday afternoon. She said, I don't like your attitude. I said, I don't like your teaching us this way. I said, this makes no sense. She said, you're out of the class. So I got marched down to the principal's office, and they called in my father, who's an executive for the Power and Light Company, and I got marched home. And so I sat in my room, and they said, you had to apologize, and I refused. So for 3 days, I refused, and my mother got so mad, I was given bread and water till I refused. Finally, yes, I'm serious. I got really mad about that. So then let me tell you what happens years later. So my father says to me, my stepfather says to me, your mother's upset. Do this for your mother, not for you. So I caved. I was not happy about it, but I caved. It turns out later, my stepfather says to me, I need to tell you the real story. I go to pick you up, and I asked what you did, and the vice principal said, don't you dare tell Kenneth this, because it'll ruin everything. He's right. It was a terrible way to teach that. My father said, you mean you're suspending him for this? He said, we have to have order. We have to have a right and proper way of doing things. But your son was right. That was a much better way of doing it. So I sat there. I just need you. I've been a pain in the neck. And I got, and yeah, you know that. All right. So anyway, American history, most of us, I don't know about you, I'll say I had boring teaching, and most of us forgot American history. And what we did get, it now turns out was heavily slanted. Let me give you some cases in point. Any of you remember American history? A lot was spent on the Massachusetts Bay Colony. This is the great arrival of the Puritans and the Pilgrims, blah, 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 blah. I don't know if any of you knew this, but did you know they were not the first ones here? That becomes a real shock to Americans. The first ones here were not in freezing, unhospitable Plymouth. They were down in Virginia. Let me read to you the following. Traveling aboard the Susan Constant, Godspeed, and Discovery, 104 men landed in Virginia in 1607. We all forgot that. Virginia, folks. Yes, Barbara Young, you can have a big smile. Good old Virginia. 13 years later, 102 settlers landed aboard the Mayflower and landed in Plymouth, which is, of course, now the gay capital of the of New England. I'm sure the Puritans would just love that now. And so we have two very different colonies, but you and I never hear about Virginia. We never heard about Pennsylvania. We never heard about New York or Maryland. And if you want to take a look at, and this is embarrassing, if I can share the screen, I think I can. And this is embarrassing, so I hate to pull a class. Oh, host disabled participant sharing in, oh, fungus. All right, I can't do what I wanted to do.
I'll turn it on.
Okay, all right. I wanted to show you the kinds of things that you and I did not get in history. Oh, we don't have time for the enslaved, unfortunately, Maureen, but that plays a big role too. Okay, here we go. I'm going to try and do this. All right, share screen. I deeply apologize for this, but this is the kind of stuff that disable. Here, look at this right here. This is in 1770. Virginia has 58,000 people. Massachusetts only 55, but Maryland has 30,000. Pennsylvania has 17,000. And down here in New York, 19,000. You add up the population of Virginia, New York, Maryland, and Pennsylvania, it dwarfs little Massachusetts. And if you want to look at where the economy was going, guess where? It was not in Massachusetts, it was in the Middle Atlantic states. Now, we don't get any of that. We're told, no, everything revolves around Puritans and Pilgrims, but we conveniently don't like to remember, hello, the Salem witch trials. That's inconvenient. Let's not mention that. And I don't know if you knew this, by the way. I think this is a delight. I don't know if you knew this. The pictures you have of Pilgrims are incorrect. You've seen pictures of Pilgrims in black, starched white, and big buckles. Where are you going to have anything that's white? Is you're out on the frontier in mud and dirt and mosquitoes, and you're having smoke all over the place from a smoke burning fire. I don't know if you knew this, to have black was dyed. Your clothes were dyed. The Puritans and Pilgrims were so poor they could not afford a silver buckle. They couldn't afford the material to have a starched white thing, and they couldn't afford black clothes. Most of them wore all kind of colored clothes of the peasants. What you saw is a reenactment of upper middle class people living in England who were nonconformists who had quite a lot of money. That's what you saw, but that was not what was landed here, and that was not Massachusetts Bay Colony. The other thing you and I are conveniently not told is Massachusetts Bay Colony, the land of the free, gave birth to Rhode Island because of a dissenter who was kicked out. And did you know Massachusetts Bay Colony had an established church to 1830? 1830. Yes, it had an established church till finally the Congregationalists were disestablished. And we're holding this up as being the be all and end all. I do not think so. But during this time, we had some delightful things happening. If you think churches fighting with each other is new, welcome to the new world, if you will. The Massachusetts Bay insisted, I don't know if you've ever read anything about the Massachusetts Bay, but these were dissenters, nonconformists. And what is the very first thing they do? They make here, when they get here, an established church. Their brethren in England were saying, what did you do? You left the established church because you want to be free. Now you come to New England and you make an established church so nobody's free. What have you possibly done? Talk about massive hypocrisy. So in New England, you had the Congregationalists establishing a church, but not to be outdone, the Church of England grabs Virginia and New York City. So you had power grabs from the very beginning, and guess who got left out? The very angry Scots and Scots-Irish and the Baptists. The Presbyterians and the Baptists got left out, and we had religious wars from the very beginning. It was not pretty. You should hear about the lawsuits that took place. The lovely time of being a clergy. Let me read to you something that I bet you've never heard. The guy's name is Charles Woodmason. He is an Anglican vicar in South Carolina in 1760s. He writes the following. He saw a need for religion in South Carolina, where 94% of the women he married were pregnant. Venereal disease, he says, was universal. Polygamy was common. Having children out of wedlock was the norm, and having many wives was considered normal. Then he says the Presbyterians were awful. Once he was met on his way to a congregation to find that the Scottish Presbyterians had hired lawless ruffians to intervene with him, and they set dogs on the congregation. Don't you love this idea of colonial America, which all you thought was sweet and lovely and kind? We had Salem witch trials, we had religious wars, and you thought this was new. You thought this was all new with what we've got ongoing today. Speaking of population, did you ever think of who went west? Think of who went west. Think about this for a minute. You're living, hey, Felix, you're living in a nice, comfortable house. It's one room, one floor, but you've got, it's brick. You can actually wash once a week if you wish. Once a month is the norm. You've got a nice stove, a little kitchen, and you're surrounded by other people and it's safe. Are you going to leave that, Felix, to go 100 miles to the west where you may be living in a tent, a lean-to, you're not going to wash for a year, you've got hostile natives, and there's nobody around you? Are you going to leave that, or are you going to stay where you are?
I'm going to stay put.
Yeah, of course. Barbara Young and Maureen. Imagine you two are married, and for a variety of reasons, your husbands are in trouble. So you head west. What are you wearing, ladies? You are wearing many, many, many layers of clothing. There are no latrines. What do you do when you have women's issues? And guess what the woman was supposed to do when they went west? Gather wood, cook, clean, get more wood, clean, milk the cows, take care of the animals, etc. Yes, and sometimes husbands plural. Yes, Oscar. I'm just saying these are who went west. People for opportunity, but also people who went west. Think about this. They went as independents. They went with what knowledge they had, which was often hand down. They went with superstition. They went with folklore. Now, think about that. We are now, look at you. You are all now a town. You are now out in Western Virginia. This is occupied today, but imagine you are in 1760 in Western Virginia. It gets too citified because you now have a town of 1,000. You now go west into Ohio, and now you're in the middle of nowhere in Ohio. And think about that. You finally decide you're going to stay, and you've got maybe 1,000 people in your city. Who are the last institutions to arrive? A school, the last to arrive. And at this point, you may get an actually educated preacher from somewhere in New England or the East Coast. But the preacher doesn't do well. Why? Because he uses a vocabulary that nobody understands. He speaks not a language of a patois of the frontier. Doesn't speak a frontier patois. He wears clothes that are different, speaks different, smells different, grooms different, and after the schoolhouse and the preacher and finally a doctor of some repute finally arrives, what have you already got in motion? Superstition, folk religion, and clergy who have it in the heart. They know nothing about biblical scholarship, but they do know Jesus. I know Jesus, and I know what Jesus has spoke to me, and I don't need an education for you to tell me what Jesus said. You need to listen from me. You don't need that book learning. You don't need that book learning. You need Jesus. And I'm here. I slept on the ground coming to see y'all. I smell like you all. I talk like you. I am like you all. Forget that educated riffraff from New England. This happened. It happened all the time. I taught a course, Religion in the US. Most of us forget, as people moved, the last people to arrive were education, doctors, etc. People that you and I assume make up society today and help it along were the last to arrive. And as it moves out west, you get then a huge growth of superstition, a huge growth of interpreting the Bible as people saw fit, which they still do today, of course. And you get all kinds of things going on, and you wonder, where did we get this? How do we get all these where do these people come up with this stuff? It happened from the beginning. And let's talk about guns. Mary Grimmy, you and your husband and Donald Grimmy are out on the 5 miles on your farm from anybody else. Why does Donald have a gun at the age of 13? I can't hear you. You have to unmute.
Either to hunt for food or protect the animals on the farm.
Precisely, at 13. People want to know, how do we get a gun culture? What the heck do you think you did? You're 5 miles away from everybody. An inconvenient truth. Were women raped like there's no tomorrow on the frontier? Were husbands shot so people could take over their farm? Were little kids abused? Yes. And why do you think people got guns? It's ingrained in our culture. And by the way, if you're a Native American, do you think you're going to like being shot at? When you get a gun, you're going to shoot back. So this whole gun culture, I get people saying to me, Kenneth, where did this gun culture come from? I said, do you know anything about our country? Do you know anything how this place was settled? I said, what would you do if you're 5 miles from the latest farm and there's you, your kids, and your wife? Who's going to protect you? Oh, and this big bear decides to visit your cows. What are you going to do? Say, hi, bear. Go away, bear. You're going to take out some kind of gun and try to drive the bear off. The idea of gun culture, the idea of superstition, the idea of saying things that sound like the Bible. Let me tell you this, you'll enjoy this. When I taught Old Testament and I taught New Testament, I had a quiz. Some of you know this. I had a 20-question quiz on knowledge of the Old Testament and 20-question quiz on knowledge of the New Testament. What it was made up of sayings that everybody knew, but guess what? Not one of them came from the Bible. Not one came from the Old Testament. Not one came from the New Testament. And the average quiz question grade was 20. When people said, no, that didn't come from this. No, it didn't come from that. People, where did these come from? I said, you all heard them, didn't you? Yes, all the time. And I said, did your grandmother tell you this was true? Or somebody in your family said, this is what the Bible says? Yes. I said, well, I got news for you. What you were told the Bible says isn't in the Bible. The idea of what biblical stuff is still out there, is a wild potpourri. So when people ask what's going on today, welcome to our history. Let us remind ourselves that today only 30% of the people in this country have a college education. And just because you have a college education doesn't mean you know anything. There is a very, very famous quote by Walker Percy. Do you know the quote? You can get straight A's and flunk life. Don't you love that quote? You can get straight A's and flunk life. Have you ever met people who got a lot of book smarts and don't know anything? Then you talk to your average person who installs your air conditioning, or your average person who cuts the grass, and you're amazed at how brilliant they are. They've got an unbelievable, blessed sense of common sense and a good, hard way of looking at things. So we take a look at a lot of superstition. 29% of the people in this country have never left the state in which they were born. That's scary. Half the people in this country have never left the country. So when you get, and if you ever looked at the size of the United States of America, if you have, you're going to see vast swaths of this country that are empty. Have you ever looked at how big Wyoming is? Have you ever looked at how big Montana is? Southern Dakota, North Dakota. Are you surprised when you look at sections of Colorado and other places and New Mexico? Are you surprised what you hear from this? Are you surprised? Where do you get what we kind of think of people who think like us? The seaboards, the Western Seaboard, the Eastern Seaboard. These are where major, but take a look then who has House of Representatives in these vast swaths of area. That's our country. And people just don't get our geography. They don't get who we are and the strange mix we've had. And so I want to talk to you about something else that came along. So when we see this, two other things to round this out. Darwin comes in, and at that point we have the great split in American Protestantism. There were those who embraced science and those who didn't. And I don't know if any of you have ever heard of the 5 fundamentals, but the 5 fundamentals is what is trying to be imposed upon us right now in this county and in this state. And in some of the states in which you live, let me tell you what they are. They came from Niagara, 1905. They are the literal truth of the Bible. You take the Bible literally. Jesus is divine. There is a virgin birth. Jesus died for us. God demanded that Jesus died for us. And finally, Jesus physically rose from the dead. That kind of theology was imprinted and demanded that this is what you're getting, and the behavior you're getting today is trying to imprint once again that kind of theology and behavior and morality that goes with it on the rest of us in this society. And you do know the overwhelming majority of the society does not believe in those 5 fundamentals. Now, we see this in our county. Did you see this in the Miami Herald? I will read to you today. This group got sex ed textbook pulled. Do you know the Miami-Dade School Board listened to somebody who doesn't even have their children in the school system? Let him speak on and on and on. His children go to a school where you're not allowed to be vaccinated. If you're a child and vaccinated, you're not allowed to attend the school. If you're a faculty member, you can't teach if you've been vaccinated. Yes, and they allowed him to carry the day. They did a poll and they found overwhelming 85% of the parents wanted a sex education book they've been using, and they listened to a minority, 5-4, to imprint upon the rest of us a morality that is not our own. We had a library, this is a famous thing making the rounds, just 40 miles north of Cedar Rapids in Iowa. And a group just like the one that attacked the school board came in and demanded they remove all LGBTQ groups. And they want to know why they have LGBTQ members in the library as librarians. They said, we want good Christian teaching in this library. The head librarian said, this library is for everybody, number one. Number two, which Christian teaching? You are aware, listen to this, you are aware there are other Christian groups who disagree with you. And the group said there are. Really? Had no idea there were other Christian groups out there that opposed what they thought. Now, my concern is I'm looking at all this history, is I have a question for all of us here. I know we love to talk about we are free to believe what we believe. My problem is, while we are free to believe what we believe, why isn't anybody articulating what you believe and stand up and say so? Hear me for a minute. I get a great void. Harold Francis sent me something today from Robert Frost. Half the world is composed of people who have something to say and can't, and the other half who have nothing to say and keep on saying it. That's Robert Frost. Why is it we become tongue-tied? Why is it somebody can't get up and say, do you realize we have Jewish synagogues in this town, 400,000 Jews in this town? For instance, we have a huge Hindu temple on US 1. We have Muslim mosques. We do have liberal Christian churches. And why is it? And we have lots of people who are atheists and lots of people who are interested in religion at all. Thank you very much. So my feeling is, if you say you believe in something, then now's the time to speak up. If you say you believe in something, then now's the time to develop some articulation skills. And if you don't feel like going up front and saying so because you're afraid of being abused, which is a good thing, and I admit I'm afraid to advertise All Souls because I don't want to get trolled and I don't want somebody beating up on my 77-year-old body. I'm afraid of that, honestly. But I'm going to darn well tell people to vote. And I'm going to tell you no more sitting around saying I don't know what to do, then vote. Do you realize that the present governor won by a mere under 1% of the vote of this county? And if all the people were voted in Palm Beach County and Broward County, he would not have been the governor. So if you like what DeSantis is doing and you're a member here, then you're entitled to your beliefs. But if you disagree, then you need to vote. None of this, I have a headache. None of this, I didn't feel like it. I'm bothered. Well, you're going to really be bothered if you don't vote. You see the results. It's about time to articulate not only with your mouth, but with your body. Body means get out and vote. And we still are allowed mail balloting. I called the election office and they said until the end of January, yes, you can still get mail-in ballots. Get them. It's not too late. We have ours. Now, I'm not going to say I'm going to call somebody out if I find out you didn't vote. I'm not allowed to do that. But Gregory Bowe says we're now selling indulgences to those who give. I'm taking your indulgence away. So there. Let's do something. If you don't like what something's going on and you have beliefs that honor all people, Thomas Paine, we have beliefs that honor all. You care for other people, and you're not interested in having one view imposed upon you, sacrificing the diversity that we are, then do something. Do something. Vote. Be sure your friends are motivated and care for each other. And if you have LGBTQ friends, we have lots of gay members here. Let's be sure they're loved and cared for. Let's be sure that they are given an embrace and they're held up. So that's my thoughts for today. America's always been a mess since we settled. There have been some tough times, some delightful slights. We read from Martin Luther King, Thomas Paine, no less, and the Declaration of Independence. Let's keep that light lit. Let's be articulate in thought, in word, and deed. Do it. Amen. It is important in good times and bad to have a moment to be quiet and to offer an actual symbolic act of fellowship, friendship, hello. Our tradition is taken from the ancient Canaanites, who took it from the Hittites, who took it from people before them, passed down, till finally, when Israel gets formed, it too adopted the custom of offering bread and a cup. And Jesus, being Jewish and an inheritor of this tradition, of course, annoyed everybody regularly by breaking cup with people outside custom. He went with Zacchaeus to lunch, a chief tax collector, a very bad thing to do, broke bread with women and children and all kinds of people regularly, not a thing that was done, and wanted to share a sense of compassion and hello. So we too try the best as we are able to offer simple cup, a simple bread, and a simple plate, and offer a cup, very simple. And for those who wish, we would, when we met in face-to-face, and we do when we're at rallies, ask people that would to simply take bread and dip it into the cup as a simple act of hello and friendship. This does not work for everybody, so we do something else. We symbolically hold hands, and we'll do that again once we are free with COVID. But in the meantime, we symbolically hold hands as we do here. And we say the following words of comfort. And we have them down here before us on the bulletin. And Gregory, if you would pull that up for us. And let me ask you to repeat after me. If you'd repeat after me. Promise me you'll remember. You are braver than you believe, stronger than you seem, and smarter than you think. God didn't promise days without pain, laughter without sorrows, and sun without rain. But the divine did promise strength for the day, comfort for the tears, and light for the way. I told Michelle this week that I'm going to heap tons of abuse on her when she can't come and finish with ending a prayer. Michelle has a gift of prayer and words and thoughts that I do not have. It is a gift. So I ask you to bear with me as we offer some parting thoughts, some parting words, and then we listen to Aretha Franklin. Spirit of life, that which grounds us in love and hope and strength and health and even friendship. Gather with us each hour, each day, as we try to navigate this thing we call life. And remind us to ever have a gratitude for those moments of humor, those moments of smiles, those moments of joy, those moments of compassion, those moments of genuine love. Amen. Please stay with me as we finish the blessing, and then we have a chance to say goodbye to everybody. May the road rise to meet you. May the wind be always at your back. May the sun shine warm upon your face. May the rains fall softly upon your fields. And when we meet again, may the divine in me greet and embrace the divine in you. Go in peace. Amen. We want to thank everybody here today who who is here today. If we can pull up a full screen, Gregory, so I can see. There we go. I want to thank everybody for coming out in the dead of summer. Let's say go to everybody. Wasn't it wonderful? We could listen to Schubert. I mean, Haydn. Did I get that right? Haydn. I went this. No, Brahms. I'm wild. We listened to Creedence Clearwater Revival. Then we listened to Aretha Franklin. We had Brahms. I mean, that is just so wild. Absolutely wild. Thank you, Oscar.
My pleasure. Thank you for your comments and thank you for always having me, All Souls. My pleasure.
And Rick is here by himself. Rick, smile. We're here by yourself. We took care of you, kept you company. Maureen is here. Nanette is here. Pat is here. Mary Grimmy from that small village over in the West Coast. I don't know if you've seen it on the map. It's called Tampa. Barbara Young, who was grinning because she's from Virginia. Yes. Oscar, Felix is there, who rescues us regularly from disasters. Gregory Bow is there. Good morning, Gregory. Gail and Tom are here. Ray, Roy, Ron is in England. Cecilia is down the street. Kay and Don Schweitzer in Ormond Beach. Chris Diaz is here from North Miami. Cindy and Larry Deach from Port Orange. Pat Kincaid from Miami.
Hi, everyone.
Kathy is our resident Armenian. Danny is also from Forest Hills, as is Pat. Gail and Tom are also from Port Orange, and Ray is from Washington Heights. What a crew.
Thanks for the ragtime too, Oscar. That was great.
And so I wish you all well. And
Ken,
yes.
this is Larry. The fourth Sunday in August.
Okay. Larry Deach, who is our backup pastoral care, will be having a chance to introduce and say hello to everybody before the service on the fourth Sunday in August. You're going to love Larry. He is
Weird.
Yeah, you heard it. Said weird. Lovely. Let me say something to you all, which I hope would think that's good. I don't know if you knew this, but a lot of times when people are clergy leading services, they're not able to worship. They feel as if they're always. This is a unique thing where I feel like I'm worshiping with you, not here and you're there. And I have a feeling this contributes to the health I have very, very much. I can't stress how wonderful it is and exciting it is to be with a group like this where we do so many different things. I mean, it's not the same thing again. The music is so, I mean, how would we ever put Brahms and Creedence Clearwater Revival together? Brahms and, I mean, it's just amazing. And can read the Declaration, and Thomas Paine in 2022. I mean, I cannot thank you enough. When you have a congregation that says, yes, try things, there is virtually no limit to the creativity you can try it and work with. I cannot express to you how freeing that is for all of us. Be safe and well. We'll see you all soon. Coming up, some wonders. I'll be sending you emails about wonders that you think as we try to navigate this interesting summer. Be safe and well. Bye-bye now.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.